Hi there. Welcome to the Bridge Podcast, sharing with you top tips and advice from top employers to help to guide you on a job hunting and career journey. My name is Aji Suragazi. I have several roles in digital marketing, and in today's special episode, I'm here to have a little conversation about how to make a switch career to the software engineering world. Today, I also have exciting news for you. I have Samuel Huang, who is a software engineer from Sydney, Singapore. Hi, welcome, Samuel. How are you?
Hey, Aji, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. What about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And actually, I'm very excited to talk to you, especially because we're going to talk about your learning and career experience. So, to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you come from, and how did you come here in the software engineering world?
Yeah, sure. Samuel, I am based in Singapore and I'm currently a software engineer here at Seedly. And for me, I've been a big advocate for since like I was young, not just coding wise, but in terms of just anything in the tech world, like the mobile phone or even like just, you know, things that are moving and improving that kind of like industry. Yeah. So just a little bit about how I came into the software engineer field. I was actually a salesperson before I even entered this field. Yeah, and like sales for me was actually pretty fun. And just like talking to people and getting to know people and trying to get like the product into their hands. And that was where like I came across during my point of time like selling something. I came across like technology and how it influenced people. And this is where like it really like caught my interest in like how can I get into the field of tech, right? So from there I came across this bootcamp called General Assembly when I was like Googling on Facebook, and it was this like title that like you can be working in software in like the next 6 months or 3 months, and that was like, oh wow, that sounds interesting, and that's something that I would like to go into. And that's where I applied for, and I met my good friend Robert, who was on this episode a couple of weeks back. And from there in General Assembly they taught you the skills, and like it really sat with me when I was doing coding. Like it helped me when I was like learning about it. It actually helped me to understand how to break down problems into smaller pieces, and it really like grew my love for software engineering. Yeah, and from there I just did the boot camp, did 3 months of that, and that's how I got into software engineering.
Very interesting experience that you've been, experienced the past how many years? And in the past 3 years or 2 years?
About 2 years, yeah, about 2 years.
Cool. Is software engineering something that you would imagine in striving in? Because you mentioned that technology is something that you really like. Is it something that you're imagining back then before you entering into the tech industry?
Right. I think how I envision tech isn't like what it is 2 years ago, like right now. Before, I always thought that tech was just this magical box where people who touch the computer, who could touch code, they can make things work. And like there's just too many things, too many complicated things happening. And like fast forward to, after getting a job and like learning more about tech and being in software, I came to appreciate and like I really understand that software is not some magical box like what I assumed before, and it is really more of like any other skills, like even for you or even like just anyone out there. It's all about learning the fundamentals and understanding how the pieces connect together and eventually paint into this like huge thing. And so yeah, that for me is how I envision tech currently. It's not a magical box. It's things that you understand the fundamentals and then you build up from there, and just like any other job as well.
Cool. So before you make a decision from sales to tech industry, what is something that you're trying to pursue? Like, what is in your mind? What was your mission back then?
Oh wow, that's a deep one. Um, I mean, besides just like when I was younger and being like passionate in tech, the mission for me was just to grow as a person. And to grow as a person, like what it means is like what skills or what kind of things that can actually drive me forward. And that for me was without a doubt tech and just like IT in general. And when I was in sales, like just talking to people, selling things, it got a bit, like tiring because there is not much things to improve on, besides just like trying to understand the product and trying to understand the person that you're talking to and trying to, to get to them in like on a personal level. But besides that, that the other skills, the other kind of like hard skills that you want to get from sales is almost non-existent, right? Just talking, understanding things. And moving into software, the mission was actually to understand, and there's so many things to understand in tech. And it's just to understand like what are the things, what are the fields that I can go into, what are the things that I can learn. And there's just so many things from what I've seen so far. Like it's almost impossible to learn everything.
Wow, that's very deep, genuine, and very passionate of you. Okay, now let's talk about the time you had your first professional experience. How do you get into the IT world? Like most employers, they want to see trainings, project, courses, or even full-time university degree. And how did you back then prove to, let's say, companies that you have this, skill set that you are able to do the job?
Right. That's a great question. And that was like the first question I asked myself as well before I entered the bootcamp. Like how can, just like this 3-month bootcamp get me and land me a job in software? Like, what you said, employers are looking for projects or even just like past experiences or even a degree. And I had that kind of doubt as well before going in. But what I came to realize is that, it doesn't really matter what you have. It what really boils down is how you are going to get the job done. And that essentially is all the jobs, right? You have to figure out what they are trying to solve, or you have to figure out what they really want. And then from there, you build your skills and get that problem solved. So like for me, like when I was going and finding my professional experience, I landed my first job in this French consulting firm called Maltem. And they gave like, I think there was like 6 different kind of rounds for me to go into. The
Wow.
first one, yeah, right. The first one was actually a take-home assignment, which I actually did really, really badly. And the take-home assignment involved learning an entirely new technology that I've not touched during my bootcamp. And from there, I had to build a mock-up or prototype of like a Kanban board. So I barely got anything working. I only got the board to display. And surprisingly, because of my enthusiasm or just like the way that I presented my project, the employer was actually, Maltem decided to take a leap of faith and like, hey, you know what? Because it's a consulting firm, I will actually recommend you to my client to see whether or not, you'd be a great fit for them. So they just, arranged a meeting and interview with my client. And the client at the time was this another French insurance company called AXA. And from there, I relied on the skills I've learned during my bootcamp and just, calmly and like collectively like understand what they were trying to ask and telling them what they want to hear. And if there's nothing that they, like if I don't know anything, I'll of course be upfront and tell them that I don't know. But I think all in all, what if you are trying to get in, like for me, if you're trying to get in tech, what you want to be is just honest and upfront about the skills that you have. And if you don't know anything, then that's where you can identify the gaps and go and learn and build from there.
Right. Wow. Speaking of the things that help facing the challenge, do you have any like friends or a mentor that support you in your IT career journey back then?
Yeah, mentor would be actually my mentor came in the form of my senior when I first worked in my first job. So when I went in there, I was like given tons of support from the seniors, the people over there. They really guided me. They really taught me the things. And I'm just really grateful to be able to find a job where the people over there, the seniors, are willing to guide you, support you, and just let you grow and flourish slowly as like a junior developer, a junior engineer. Yeah, so that was my mentor. My mentor specifically is this guy called Mahin. So Mahin, he was really like when I first entered the job, he was really like calm and he like, hey, don't worry if you don't know this. He always tells me that you will learn this over time, if you don't know the answer right now, don't worry, slowly you will get to it. And it's always very reassuring. It's just telling me, you will get there. Don't worry, don't beat yourself too hard. Just take it slow. And I still resonate with that, like right now, if there are things that I don't know, I just need to give it time. And that's one thing that my mentor has taught me, Mahin, about it. Yeah.
Wow, that's very passionate and very kind and of him to give that sense of like mentorship to you. And speaking of the challenge that you've been working on in your first journey, what was the challenge and struggle back then?
Right. Oh, the challenge aplenty. There's just like so many things to just really prepare for. But I'll just talk about how I had to prepare the mindset. Like that was the first hurdle for me. It's because of the things that I tell myself, like, hey, even after I finish like the boot camp, am I really good enough? Do I really have the skill set? Do employers really want me? Um, so that was the first challenge, right? Just like the mindset. Over time, because of Robert as well, so Robert, he was the same batch as me. We did the same boot camp together. And I usually just talk to Robert and like, hey, how's the job hunt? Or I'll tell him, hey, my job hunt hasn't been going so well. And he's always telling me like, hey, go just try it. Don't think about it, just try it. Just try it. And that was like the first challenge. I got over that. And you know what? If things don't work out, just keep trying. And
Right.
so yeah, that was like the first thing that I had to overcome. And then the second and subsequent things are all just like really technical. Of course, it's just like learning the fundamentals, learning about if you are in, doing a front end development, you have to be strong in how you want to learn about design, CSS, or if you're in back end, you want to learn more about certain like programming paradigms. Yeah, so first challenge mindset, the second and subsequent challenges were all just technical things, and it just takes time for me to learn them.
Wow, cool. And then you prepare for it and you focus on learning and improving. But then, like you mentioned, you face a scary prospect after the graduate of the bootcamp, which is actually finding a job. I am curious, how did you find the job search or your first opportunity back then? Again, what is your, first experience in the professional IT field?
Right. It took me about like 2 months of just grinding every day on LinkedIn, on on the job portal searches, and I just applied every day. I treat it as like my full-time job. Five,
Right.
five, five jobs I have to apply. Just write in, fill out the form, and then after the five, I'll tell myself, okay, I'm done for the day with applying, and then the next day, rinse and repeat over and over again. Yeah, and that was like how I started to apply. But every time I applied, I always make sure that like I go and apply to companies that even have like 5 years of experience. I don't care. I just go for it, just apply,
Right.
because you never know, right? Maybe they might
Yeah,
be
yeah.
willing to accept people who will, teach you, and yeah. So that was for me, like just applying, and then at the same time also slowly doing some of my side projects, and building on the previous projects I've done during my bootcamp, and just slowly go from there.
Right. I've done it myself too. Resonates and how the struggle back then. it's
Right, right.
it's just like getting a job. It's something that exciting, but also like you don't know what the prospect. You don't know until when this is going to progress. And let's talk about the interview process. Like, how was it for you in the first time? Facing the interview process. What is the biggest challenge in the interview process back then?
Right. So well, I'm trying to remember now, and it brings back like a flood of memories right now.
Right.
Uh,
Bring it on.
yeah, right. So the first time I like where I got like that interview process down after doing the take home assignment, um, there were a couple of rounds, and each round were always about some sort of problem that they want you to solve. So the first one was asking me to do a data structure and algorithm live coding with the other person. So it's like just me and the other person in the Zoom call. And he gave me this problem, this algo problem where I had to reverse a number. So I had to reverse a number, and I was like, oh, well, that seems pretty all right. But here was the kicker, right? When I was doing it, he gave me a number where like if you get 500 and then you reverse the number, it should be 005. Then there lies the problem, because when you try to flip a number with zero starting in front, sometimes what will happen is they will ignore the zeros, right? They just drop the zero and then just give you the number, which is not what the guy wanted. He wanted the zeros to appear. And like I was like, why isn't the zero appearing? Why is the zero not displaying for me? And I had lack of experience, and I just like try to think of it, try to Google. You could Google during the actual interview, and then Google, and it didn't really give any answer. And time's up. It was like an hour, and I didn't really solve the problem. It was like, oh, if you happen to solve it, just email me the algo, the solution. And I was like, okay, thank you for your time. And I ended the call, and I quickly slacked one of my friends, like, hey, do you know about this issue? And he was like, hey, yeah, of course. And then he gave me a link that pointed that, like, computers don't usually, like, for example, if it's a number, if it's zeros, they will give you something else. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I quickly, within like the first 10 minutes, I emailed back the guy. I gave him the solution, and then I didn't hear from him. So I waited like 2 days afterwards. And that's where like he got back to me and was like, hey, you know what? You proceeded to the next round. So that's like the second round now. And the second round was the same thing again, but this time it was more like question and answer based. So he asked me questions, and then I had to answer him. And then it went back and forth for like another hour. And then before I proceeded to the last round, which was like a cultural kind of interview. And then they just wanted to know more about you as a person, how well you will fit with the team. And being in sales, that was like pretty good. Like I could talk and like really understand people. And yeah, that was pretty much the whole process of how I, from first interview with just algo questions to towards the end now. Yeah.
Wow. What a journey experience.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or lessons you have learned from facing those interview process that you would like to share?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great one, because tips are something that I wish I had more when I was applying for the interview. And the three most important things that I would like to share with people is, the first one is don't be afraid of failing, right? You can go for the interview and just know that things might not go you know how you planned it out to be. And don't be afraid of fail, because if you are afraid of failing, then you never take the chance to go and try even more interviews. You'll keep telling yourself that, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And then if you don't want to fail, you won't go for the next interview. So yeah, the first one is don't be afraid of failing. The second one would be to go in with like a super positive mindset, and just think that everything will go well, because there's this like law, right, where if you think that everything will not go well, then it will not go well. It was Murphy's law, right? Yeah. So second tip is definitely go in, be positive, think that you had the best day in your life, like you won $1 million, you had just everything going your way. So if you go in with a positive mindset, the rest will follow suit. Yeah. And the last tip would be to just have fun, like treat the interview process as something like you will be with your friend. Of course, not too casual where, you can like call the person a bro, or like, make some weird jokes, but just have fun with the whole process. And the more fun you have, the more you actually get out of the experience, because I always believe that an interview skill is not the same as like a normal technical skill when you do your day-to-day job. Interview skill is also a separate thing. The more fun you have, the more experience you can soak in, the more things you can remember, then that's where you can actually excel in the subsequent interviews. When you go for the next one, it'll start the ball rolling.
Awesome tips. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Now I would like to moving on into a little bit of transition. You did your engineering job in tech, and I think now you're pretty succeed in getting the job, and you're working as a software engineer with Seeds. And I wanted to know what a typical days look like for you.
Right. For me, a typical day working here will be in the morning. So just like, break it down, like from the morning once I wake up, have my cup of coffee, all the way to the end. So yeah, at 8 a.m., I'll wake up, I'll rinse, shower up, have my coffee, and then start the day at 9 sharp. So over there at 9, when I open my laptop, I'll start looking at some of the latest news that has been happening in the tech world. Because tech world usually happens in US time, and we are usually like way ahead of them. And by the time you sleep and you wake up, there'll be some big changes that have happened already. So
Right.
yeah, I'll always try to keep up and catch up with the news. And from there, I will work on any tickets that I have been given or any leftover tickets I have been doing before. So I'm mostly working on like the front end. And so I work on the visual on the browser side, and I do a lot of CSS. So if there's any like new feature or new design that I have to implement, that's where I will start implementing, from around 10 to 11. And 10 to 11 is where I focus and get my work done. And 11 is where we do our stand up. And so stand up is about 15 minutes. You will, just tell about what you've done so far, what you're currently doing, and then whether there are any blockers. So once that stand up is done, then that's where I will have like some time to, organize my work and see what are the tickets I need to prioritize. So from there until 12:30, I'll do the organizing, and then work on the tickets for my lunch. And then after lunch, it's back to work again until 6 p.m. at the end of the day. So yeah, that's what my typical day kind of looks like for me.
Cool. I'm curious, what are the things you enjoy about your work? Can you tell me, or can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like actually working with the IT team at Seeds?
Right. So thing that I really enjoy is the problem solving aspect. So when we work with designers, they usually give us a Figma link, and this Figma link will contain the design that they have created. So what I would do is I would usually try to identify how I want to get the things to look like that. And then from there, I have to break it down, like how do I want to implement the functionality. So for me, the fun part about it is just really breaking down things and identifying what are the small things I could do before attempting them. And then once I've gathered them, solving them gives me that rush of like, oh, I finally solved something. There's this like adrenaline, and then you feel happy. So that's one thing that I really enjoy about my work: breaking down things and trying to implement them, and then solving the problem finally.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like working with the IT team at Seeds?
Day to day, well, we don't really work in like an IT team. It's more like we call it like a scrum team.
Mm-hmm.
And you have like your back-end engineers, you have your front-end engineers, you have your product designer, you have your product manager. So that's what like the team consists of. So day to day, we usually chat on Slack, and we have, if there's anything that we need to ask, we're just usually ping to each other on Slack, or we will write a ticket comment on our Jira board. And yeah, that's how we usually work together in Slack, mostly online. So we work from home.
Right, right. Is there any like surprising things about your work so far?
Surprising thing would be actually how small my team is. When I first entered my current job, I didn't expect the team to be this small. So we only have like a total of like 5 guys trying to create a product.
Wow.
And yeah, so like for me, the most surprising thing is always how we manage to finish certain features that might take like a big team to complete, and we only have like 5 guys to actually like get things rolling. So that's the most surprising thing for me. A small team, but we get our work done pretty quickly.
Right. Moving on to next question. So you mentioned that software engineering is something that it's very challenging. There's a lot of problem solving. And how do you keep up with the software engineering field? Like any community project or collaboration that you are doing to keep you, let's say, up to date?
Right. Great question. I think it's important to always be finding something to do, and especially in this line of work, because technology is always like, moving fast, and you have to constantly be updated on the things to do. If not, you'll be left behind, and then, everything will lag behind. But for me, what I've done so far is I try to find some side hustle. And so after work on like Tuesdays and Saturdays, I do teach certain sort of like concepts, engineering concepts, or like I teach things at this place called Rocket Academy. And
Interesting.
Yeah, so what it is, it's also similar to the bootcamp that I attended before, where you have people who want to do a mid-career switch, and they'll go to this bootcamp. So that's what I am like doing for my side hustle, right? I try to teach people who are transitioning from a full-time job to the software world. Yeah,
Right.
so yeah, that's for me how I try to keep up with the software engineering field by still, like teaching. And as you teach, the fun thing about that is you also get to learn about the new and greatest things, and you keep updated because your students will also ask you, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, have you heard of this? And you have to be able to like, think on your feet, or like be able to answer their questions.
Awesome. You've been working in the tech industry for about 2 years now, right?
Yeah, about
Um,
2 years.
about 2 years. And what do you think are the essential skills for a software engineer?
Right. The essential skills. So the most important thing is being able to solve problems. So problem solving is the number one essential skill to have as a software engineer, because day-to-day work, you always face with problems. You always have things that you need to solve, and not, like not being able to solve it will actually like make you feel really frustrated. And so learning how to problem solve is the most essential skill, number one. The other essential skill, which I would say is the same for everybody else, is communication. So communicating is like super important when it comes to just about anything, right? When it comes to asking about or further asking about the requirements for your ticket or the problem that you're trying to solve, or also like communicating with the other engineers about certain things that you are unsure of, or just communicating with even like, people who are asking you certain things, and you must learn how to communicate. So I think being able to communicate is such an essential skill, not just as a software engineer, but just for everybody in general. So like these two things, problem solving and communication.
Do you think years of experience and maybe a computer science degree are important for someone aspiring to work in tech?
Uh, yes, I think that not the degree, but the ability to want to learn every day, like that growth mindset, right? So getting the degree is not as important as having someone who wants to learn and keep growing every day. So if you ask me whether like getting a degree is really important, I would say the idea of why you want to get a degree is the most important thing, which is, you want to learn something, you want to solve something, you want to be able to do your job better. And so that is super like important to have that growth mindset, to always be learning, and not just the paper that comes with the learning.
Wow, okay, cool. Having a career in tech now seems, let's say, very promising, right? And so if we want to plunge into very different world of coding, we need to remember that it's while it's more accessible, than ever, it's easier to people to join, very quick journey, but it's not an easy option to do. And so I wanted to ask you, what are things that to consider before switching career to the coding or engineering world?
Well, the the first thing that comes to mind is actually going to all the free resources that you have right now. So right now on the internet, you can get all sorts of information, all sorts of knowledge. And there's free code camp right now, there's Code Academy. And so if you want to really get into software engineering, right, try your hands on these kind of free resources during your free time, so that you can get a feel of what your day-to-day job will be like. So go in there, try to get your hands dirty, follow the instructions. And if you happen to not like it after the first couple of weeks of doing it, then maybe this might not be like the cup of tea for you, because software, like learning how to read code, is actually really, really tiring. Just like reading in general, if you try to read something that you don't like, you'd be so tired and you'd be so exhausted. Yeah, so first, if you want to get into software engineering, try the free resources. If you don't like it, then it probably isn't for you.
Right, right. We ask you a lot of tips and advice questions. And we're almost jumping to our last question, actually. And one more advice question. Do you have any like advice for anyone aspiring to work in software engineering? Can you recommend us tips or advice on taking a similar path as you?
Right. Yeah. So, oh, that's a tough question actually, right? Like the path that you will want to like for those who who want to go into this field, right, is to just first learn how to enjoy reading dry and super boring documentation. I think that's number one. Like if you want to, really get into this field, right, most of the time besides just coding, right, coding like maybe takes up, I would say, like 1/3 of the time during your day-to-day job. The other times will be spent just reading and understanding what you are actually trying to do with your code. So first is to get into the habit of reading and loving how to read dry and technical things. And once you have done that, once you have started to love how to read, and it's because of this job that I'm in right now that grew my love for reading. So now I read a lot, just about anything, not just like technical things, but I read books, which before I hated reading books. So yeah, thanks to this job now I love reading. So reading, and then after you've done reading, and it's the next thing is really learning how to apply the things that you've read. Because the best way to learn after just reading is to apply and get your hands dirty by opening up, your code editor and coding things that you've just learned. Then that will like stick to your head the most. So build anything that you can think of. If you want to create like, a simple to-do list, that's also great, because you can try a to-do list in many different languages, many different ways. You can figure out how to make your to-do list better. And so like getting your hands dirty is one of the best ways to learn and get in that information stuck in your head.
Wow, I think that's very valuable insights and lessons and tips that you're giving to us. Now, speaking of last question, and if people want to connect with you personally or like, yeah, anything, something related to personal, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. I am pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can find me at SAMUEL HUANG. I think that's my
We're
LinkedIn
going to
handle.
put the link on the description box
Right.
below.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, if not, you can also see the things that I've done on GitHub. And my GitHub handle is like UPIEEZ. But that's not a way to connect with me. So LinkedIn is the only way. I don't really have Facebook. I don't use Facebook. I don't use Instagram. So LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. Samuel, this has been a fantastic podcast interview. Thank you so much for being with me today, sharing your passionate, valuable insights and career journey.
Thank you for having me, Aji. It was really, really fun. I like this. Enjoyed this podcast time, and I hope to hear more of your episodes the next few times as well with other guests.
Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody will learn so many insights from this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.